This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Before this episode starts, I just want to take a minute to thank you guys, all the loyal listeners to the podcast. The podcast is steadily growing. I checked out the analytics on Libsyn. That's the podcast host, and it says that the podcast has been heard in 34 different countries around the world, and 46 of the 50 states are downloading the podcast on a regular basis. So it's really awesome. It's more than I could have hoped for. Really excited. So I thank you for that. It's truly appreciated. In this interview, I sit down with retired California Highway Patrolman Gilbert Reyes. It's a really fun interview. He saw a ton of stuff as a highway patrolman, as you can imagine. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So without further ado, episode number 9. Gil, thank you for coming on the podcast, man.
Well, my pleasure, Steve. How you doing?
Very, very good. So, Gil, you were a CHP officer, California Highway Patrol, which is California's state police, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So I have a question for you before we get started that I've always been curious about, and you're just the man to answer it. So I'm from Massachusetts originally, and they just have a state police department, and the state police patrol. They do mainly highways, and they do a bunch of other functions in towns that maybe don't have police officers. They'll offer the police service there. But why is there? Is that just a difference in style, the naming of it, or you guys? Is there differences?
You know what? I think basically we're both state agencies. Maybe our function and our mission may be a little different, but the end result, I think, is basically the same. The primary function for us as highway patrolmen with California is our enforcement of the vehicle code. But then again, being a law enforcement agencies, especially in my case, I had a lot of variety as far as assignments went, as far as law enforcement was concerned.
I can imagine the working for a state agency is really cool, especially California when it's like one of the largest states in the country, and I think it just surpassed England in size of its economy. So it's a gigantic place for sure.
I didn't know that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So, and you guys do to me the dreaded sleepover police academy. There's nothing that I could think of that's worse that I wouldn't rather do at the beginning of a career is go sleep somewhere in a barracks, you know?
Well, you know what? I thought that at first, but there's a lot of positives to it. One in particular is that it is live-in. It's almost 6 months, and you really build great friendships. That brotherhood really takes hold and evolves and grows and just is nurtured there. And that's probably one of the biggest benefits there. And it allows you to concentrate on your chosen career field and really get involved in your training. And to me, it was very positive. I didn't regret it at all. That was one of the things I think that allowed me to get introduced to the law enforcement lifestyle.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I hear the same thing from buddies back home where you can go to a variety of academies in Massachusetts. Some of them are stay over, and they say the same thing. After they've gone through it, they say that's legit. That's the real deal when you go there and you sleep, eat, and breathe it. For 5 days a week.
Yes, you live there. You're that's your residence for 6 months. The only way it wouldn't be, and we had some guys that were actually from the Sacramento area, because our academy for the highway patrol is in Sacramento, California, and there were a few guys that went through the academy with me that live local. They did have to stay, but on the weekends they didn't have a long drive to get to visit their loved ones.
Oh, that's cool. Would the academy stay open on the weekends for people who were like a long way from home? Could you remain there?
Oh yes, it was your residence. There were a couple guys that never left, not by choice. It's a lot of them came from all over the United States, and they really didn't have the resources at the time to go back and forth to say the West Coast. There were a couple guys that were from out east, and they just remained at the academy on the weekends. And it was live-in. The chow hall was left open.
And they pretty much leave you alone on the weekends. They're not there chasing you around.
Yes. Well, you know what? They would leave you alone as long as you adhered to the rules, just like any other place that you live. But being a law enforcement academy, there were a couple of things that were you couldn't do.
You probably didn't want to come back walking in zigzags at night,
No,
from the bar.
not at all. Not at all. Because believe it or not, when you left, anytime you left, you had to sign out. And when you came back, you had to sign in. So there was somebody there to watch all the time. You were monitored, that's for sure. But it was a place you could stay and reside for the entire time if that was your choice.
Very cool. Gil, can you tell the audience the first time you responded to a call that you considered like a hot call, really got your blood going and you had that adrenaline dump?
You know what? One incident really stands out, and it's not really a call. You've got to remember that with the highway patrol, our primary function is traffic enforcement. And I just got off a break-in, and I was on patrol. I was happened to be a freeway beat. And the location that I worked, the station I worked, I was really fortunate in that we had a variety of areas to work, and you could either work a freeway beat or a surface street. This particular evening, I was working a freeway beat. It was in the North County of San Diego, an area through Oceanside, Leucadia, and Sanitas on I-5, and I was on patrol. And mind you, again, I was a rookie. I'd just gotten off a break-in. I was really young and really into my job. I don't know how to explain it. I was in a brand new 1982 Ford Mustang. At the time, the Highway Patrol had, I believe they referred to them as interceptors, but they were vehicles that were really fast. And
nice.
They were able to get up and go. And the primary function was for speed enforcement to force the traffic and speed up and along the freeway in that area. Again, that was I-5 through the North County of San Diego. But ready to get off, and I was working an afternoon shift. And a call had come out that I'm not going to use code, but it was an armed robbery that had happened to a liquor store. It occurred in the Oceanside area, which was south, or shall I say north of where I was working. And they put it out as a dark-colored foreign make sedan, black in color, and they had only the last three of the license plate number. And I thought, lo and behold, it'd be nice to really get involved in getting my first car chase.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I was traveling south around Santa Fe Avenue. That's in around Leucadia area of North County of San Diego. And this vehicle blows right by me. When I say blows right by me, I was in the fast lane, and I was usually cruise around the a little faster than the flow of traffic. And this vehicle literally flies right by me, doesn't even see me, or if it did see me, didn't care. So I try to catch up to it. And lo and behold, the last three, license plate number match. And so I get on the radio, and mind you, I'm a rookie, and I still get nervous with radio calls, and
sure,
try on the radio and talk and act professional and sound like I know what I'm doing.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so I put out, I wanted to run a Roland 29. I was, in other words, I was on the freeway traveling behind a vehicle, and I ran the license plate, and the license plate came back stolen. And at the time that came back stolen, the driver, I'm sure, saw me right behind him, and he punches it. When he punches it, again, my heart's racing. I'm trying to act professional. And when he takes off, I take off, and I put it out. And believe it or not, Steve, I probably yelled into the radio instead of sounding great and sounding professional. I sounded like a rookie. But anyway, to make a long story short, he picks it up, I pick it up, and we're in and out of traffic. Traffic's probably light to moderate, but it's a 4-lane highway, shall I say freeway, and he's in and out of traffic. I look down at my speedometer, and we're hitting 125, 130 miles an hour.
Oof.
I'm putting out locations. When I'm putting out locations, again, I'm, instead of flowing and saying, I remember the call sign I had that night. It was 92.7. And I remember saying 92.7 in pursuit and yelling this, and I just sounding like a rookie. I tell you, your mind's racing, your adrenaline's going, you're putting out locations in and out of traffic. We're doing this for probably about 4 or 5 miles. Again, the call comes out as a armed robbery. In armed robbery, there's a weapon involved. So all these things are going through my head. Be ready for this, be ready for that. And
Sure.
just like any other cop, you always go through these scenarios in your mind, and you actually role play in your mind. And all that role playing wasn't a role play this time. It was actually something that was I was chasing a bad guy, and all these thoughts are going through my head. This guy's threatened the use of force. I can shoot this guy. I can take this guy out. All these things are just like running through my head. So about 4 or 5 miles into the chase, we're going so fast that all my backup, they're still trailing me. And I remember, calling for an air unit, a helicopter, and they're en route. And you've got people converging from all over. And when I say people, we're going through that location, and we've got San Diego Sheriff, we've got San Diego PD that's sent it up, and we've got our units that are behind me that are trying to catch up. But as we come south, and there's a split in the freeway where it turns into 5 turns into 805, and you could take either 805 south or 5 south. Well, right before we get to that location, this guy dives to the shoulder. And when I say dive to the shoulder, he goes from the fast lane to the slow lane and into the right shoulder. And at the right shoulder there, he begins to slow down. And I'm trying to keep all this officer safety stuff in mind, and I try to keep everything straight, stay safe. And this guy's slowing down. I'm behind him. I didn't want to get too close. Didn't want to stay too far.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted everything together and let advise the responding units what's going on. And I'm telling them, and again, I'm sure I'm yelling into the radio, and I know I am, and I didn't even want to listen to that tape after the incident. He comes to a stop, and I come to a stop. I put it out that, suspect vehicle comes to stop right shoulder. He may take foot bail. I'm not sure. And sure as heck, as soon as I say that, the door flies open. I try to get out before he does, pull my gun. He doesn't even look back, and he takes off, and he jumps where he stops on the right shoulder. There's a guardrail. And little did I know, on the other side of the guardrail, there's a hill that literally just goes straight down. And he jumps over, I jump over right behind him. Again, I have my gun in my hand, and I remember, don't put my finger on the trigger. I don't want to shoot my gun until I have to or need to.
Right.
So I jump over, and when I jump over, I hit the other side of the guardrail, and I literally fall and roll down probably about 25 feet. As I'm doing this, I hold onto my gun. I'm trying to stop sliding down the hill, but I'm not sliding. I'm literally rolling. And as if you can picture somebody rolling, it's almost like a cartoon scenario.
Full uniform, gun in your hand, just rolling down a hill.
And I lose my hand radio, handheld. And as I realize that, I come to my feet with just all in disarray. I just full of adrenaline, keeping my eye out for this guy. And he, turns out, had rolled, and I was on the other side of this bush area. And I stopped, look, and I'm just waiting, just got my gun pointing wherever my eyes are going. And I see him run. As he runs, he's running towards this business area. And to my benefit and to my luck, as he runs, I'm right behind him, and I don't have a chance to fire off my gun, only because he was too far, and I just didn't have a clear shot. He makes the left, goes around the corner, and I'm probably about 20, 25 feet behind him. But as he turns the corner, again, you got to remember your tunnel vision. You really don't hear anything. I couldn't put out my locations because I didn't have a radio. But as this guy runs, turns the corner, I was fortunate enough that there was a San Diego Police Department unit that had just been right at the right place. And this guy literally runs, turns the corner. We wind up nabbing him, picking him up, and nobody shot. But that's the first intense adrenaline rush to where it was what it's all about.
Yeah, man, that is hell of a first call.
It was, yeah. Now, come to find out, the guy had all the money up in his vehicle when we back up to this vehicle, and he was I don't know what his thinking was or whatever, but when he ran, he had his weapon that was it was under his a seat, and he just wanted to get away. Guy on parole had just got released and just up to no good and doing his thing, And it wound up being a good ending, but good first story for a young guy that had just got on the job.
Absolutely. I mean, after that, you kept a clean uniform back in your locker, right?
Yeah, and luckily it was towards the end of shift, and being the young guy and just getting razzed by all the older guys about yelling into the radio, and but it wasn't as bad as it seemed. But just like anything else, you always want to project and sound professional and not sound like you're all like you're a rookie. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I had some calls back home where I was like, I just took that breath and first, and then go on the mic. Just give yourself a second to get composed, so you're not.
Yeah. But I tell you, it just happened just like that, and right towards the end of shift, and it's the way it goes, And it was a good story to share, and had a good ending.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a humorous call or event that you dealt with?
I tell you, this one, it's humorous to me. At the time, it wasn't very humorous, and this is the reason why. I was working with a partner of mine, and me and him we were working a graveyard shift, and we had made a stop on this individual, and this fellow was he was a big guy. He was about 6'3", 6'4", built just like an offensive lineman, And we stopped him, made contact. There was just something a little hinky about the guy just from the get-go. Well, it winds up that he was in possession of some crystal meth. He was tweaking. He was just high, and he needed to go to jail. Well, mind you, it's my partner and myself. We're both probably about 5'8" at the time, a nice lean 170, 165 pounds, in pretty good shape. Well, we go to take this guy to jail, or try to attempt to take him to jail. And we go to place him under arrest, do our thing. And he literally tells us, you know what, I'm not going to go to jail. But he says it so matter-of-factly that he wasn't going to go. Well, that's just not the way it works, The fight's on. And the fight starts, and we try to get him to the ground, and we're wrestling with this guy. But you've got to picture this. We're on the right shoulder. There's a wide dirt shoulder, and we're fighting with this guy. And he's literally, it's just like a cartoon movie where this big guy is literally brushing us off and throwing us off like if we're feathers. Our next approach is we start beating this guy with our PR 24s, our nightsticks, and we'd been better off hitting him with straws. It just wasn't working. So we put out a cover call, and in the meantime, we're trying to get into position to choke this guy out, to get him down any way we can. And it's about, I would imagine, about a minute before our backup comes. But in the background, we hear the sirens coming. We hear just the cavalry coming. And we're fighting with this guy back and forth. He's whipping us off. We're jumping on top of him. And it's almost hilarious because it's like you're literally getting your rear end kicked by this guy that's just strong, high, not going to go anywhere.
It's like two kids trying to fight their dad.
Yeah. And you know what? I can laugh about it now, but at the time it was pretty intense.
I bet.
And it was a knockdown, drag out type of fight, punches, kicks, everything except, and I don't know why, and I kept this, I was fully aware of keeping my gun side away from this guy. But as we were doing this and fighting, I literally smoke, fighting, grunting, hitting, sound of flesh off our fists. And this guy's just not really yelling, but just not going to go to jail. And the saving grace, and I remember feeling so comforted in the fact that our backup goes on scene, and I've got these two buddy of ours that were our beat partners. That these guys were two football players themselves, Andy and Terry, and they approach us, they run towards us. But it's really funny how it turns out, because at the time I look up, there's smoke, there's dust, and right behind them is the light of a helicopter unit that's over us. And little did we know that they're actually putting out what's going on, guiding the units in, what's happening. And of course, the responding units have their adrenaline rushing. They're running towards us. And as they run towards us, the light of that helicopter just has the silhouette of these two monster guys coming at us. And it's like saving grace, like these hero movies where finally the good guy backups here. And,
right.
and they jump and on this guy, help us. We get this guy, we're out of breath. We get him hooked up, handcuffed. And literally after this guy's handcuffed, I roll over and just I'm exhausted and almost laughing. And me and my partner are looking at each other, shaking our head. And we were actually just grinning, laughing out of disbelief and probably out of fear and adrenaline. And that was something that we laughed at for a really long time. That was really hilarious, but to think about it, how it went down and how backup came and how it looked, and just was like being in a slow motion movie, and it was pretty hilarious. It was something that I thought was fun.
Right.
Now we could laugh about it, and it's something that stuck in my mind for a long time and still does. That's why I shared it with you.
No, that's great. Yeah, it's that PCP is like the stories you guys have from this stuff is terrifying. But hilarious.
Yeah, the funny thing is, the guy, the tox results came back on the guy, and we thought maybe he was on PC, but he just came back just with crystal meth in the system and a lot of liquor, and this guy was just
okay,
out to go to jail, but he didn't have the PCP look. He just looked like he was tweaking and just didn't want to go to jail, and he had a lot of fight in him that was drug induced, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word.
He wasn't feeling any pain, I'm sure.
No, but I'm sure he did the very next day when he woke up in jail.
Yeah, I always go to PCP in my mind whenever I hear a story like that.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that was at the time that it was pretty prevalent at the time, and he didn't have that PCP stare. He didn't have anything like that going on. So, but it wouldn't have surprised me if he did have something like that in the system, but it didn't happen that way.
Gil, can you tell us about the strangest or most bizarre thing that you dealt with?
Yes, this one really is a mind blower, because not only was it bizarre, it kind of startled me in a way, and you'll get it as I explained to you. I was working again a graveyard unit with a partner of mine, and it was probably about 2:00 in the morning, and the call was on the freeway. It was a call of a rollover. A solo rollover vehicle was found to be, when we went on scene, came to rest in the center divider. And again, this is a 4-lane highway, shall I say freeway. It's a southbound side of the freeway through Del Mar in the North County of San Diego. And me and my partner arrive on scene, and we see the vehicle. You could tell it had rolled over. No other vehicles involved, like just a basic rollover. And it was my idea or my suspicion that somebody probably got ejected, because we were the first on scene, and none of the ambulance or any of the emergency personnel had arrived on scene. So at the time we got there, the first responsibility is to stabilize the scene. So we laid out a flare pattern to ensure that we had oncoming traffic guided away from the scene, and give us a little working area in that fast lane. Once we did that, as we were doing that, the fire department had arrived on scene and noticed that there was a solo individual in the vehicle, and the individual was literally head first into the floorboard, and you could see his feet, and if you could picture a body as if he was asleep, head first with his back towards you on the floorboard on the passenger side of a vehicle. And this vehicle, again, it happened to be a, what do you call those, without no roof? God darn it, I lost.
Convertible?
Convertible, God darn it, convertible. But it was a convertible. So as we walked up, we saw the guy in there, and it looked, he looked like, he was gone. And, he had that look of a death already. He had, his skin color was gone, and you could see the fire personnel noticed that he was already just gone,
Mm-hmm.
Well, they worked on him. They pulled him out. I didn't know this. And said they pulled him up to work on him. Me and my partner began to walk past the vehicle. And as we were walking past the vehicle, we were just looking for evidence, make sure nobody else got ejected. So as we were walking, we're in the center divider. And as I'm walking, put my flashlight, and the beam sees this object. And at the same time the object appears, I'm probably about 10 to 15 feet away from it. And my flashlight hits this object, and it is the individual's head. He
Whoa.
had got decapitated, and his head was like if they cut it off, took it off his body, and just set it head up, looking straight at me with the eyes open. And it
Whoa.
really struck me, and it was whoa. And that was a pretty bizarre surprise, because when I seen it, I yelled for my partner, and it says, "Pat, take a look at this." And he looks, and it was like, whoa, because he was just a little bit behind me. Because, you're looking in the bushes, you don't know what you're going to find. Just in the process of just clearing the scene and making sure everybody's, nobody else is out there, and evidence, beer, whatever it is that you're looking for. But I put my flashlight in front of me, and the beam hit that decapitated head, and it happened to be the fella's head that was head first into the floorboard of that solo rollover. And come to find out, at the time, freeways were actually divided by not hard concrete barriers. They were actually cable barriers, and they were just cables, literal cables that were strung down the center divider. And it just so happened that during the rollover, it looked like he was just in the right place at the right time when the vehicle rolled over, and it literally sliced his head in half, and the force of the collision caused his head to roll a lot more ahead of the vehicle after it came to rest. And I thought that was very strange, bizarre, and different.
Oh my gosh, that is.
People are able to have a firsthand story about. So that was probably one of my most bizarre events during the course of my time on the job.
Yeah, that's awful and bizarre for sure. So when you walked by the car, you just figured the guy that was head down in the floorboard. You figured, oh, he's probably dead, but you figure he had his head still.
Yeah, because the way it was positioned, his head first into the floorboard, and he was under the dash. So it was just a natural assumption that he was just head first and dead, and his skin color and skin tone was that of somebody that was killed in the accident. And at the same time that I took a look at that body, the fire department was starting to work on him. But as I walked and they were working on him, I'm sure they knew what was going on, didn't know where his head was. But they didn't tell me, and I'm sure they were waiting for me to find it, and I got it.
Wow, that is that's nuts, man.
Yeah,
Jeez.
It's funny because you look at some of these horror shows and you see these heads that are placed on a table on how those things go. And
sure,
I saw it for real, but instead of on a table, it was come to rest in the middle of a dirt center divider on a freeway.
Now, did that mess with you at all? I mean, the times I saw kind of disturbing deformations of people's bodies, the next day when I woke up, it was always the first thing I thought of. And it always took me a couple days to kind of get it out of my system. It kind of screwed with me for a couple of days. Did it bother you at all, or were you just?
You know what, Steve, I don't know if it bothered you, but I would say that maybe it did, because us as cops, as law enforcement officers, sometimes we won't say it bothers us, but I think that's why after shift we go out and we go out and have a drink and build that camaraderie with our friends, because instead of talking about it, we know about it, don't have to say anything, but we just comfort each other and have a good time and laugh and kind of like drink it away. And it's a cynical way of looking at it, but I think it's a real way of looking at it. So did it bother me? I wouldn't admit it, but I'm sure it did. And it caused, I don't know, it pointed you in the right direction or the wrong direction of just letting that steam out, or those bothersome moments melt away with your friends and having a good time and not really speaking about it, but just partying it away, I guess you would.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, you do take. It's a real comfort you feel when you're with another cop who's either experienced the situation you were in with you or similar situations. That's when you really feel like more than a friend. You feel like it's like a brotherhood. You feel comforted and
Exactly, because they were there and their eyes share the same events with you, so you don't have to explain anything to them. You just have to be there with them and have a good time and blow off steam. You
yeah.
know, so I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Gil, can you
Yes, sir.
tell us about the most intense or terrifying event that you dealt with?
You know what, Steve? There's one event that really stands out because you go through a career, and most of our calls are incidences that happen, and they're a moment, a time, a call, and it's nothing that prolongs over a period of time. And the reason I say that is because the one thing the one incident, the one historical incident I would refer to that really stands out with me is the Rodney King riots. And I bring that up only because I responded to that along with a large group of my partners the night that those riots started, and to be involved and be a part of that whole event was not a night thing. It was literally an event that lasted days, to where we were shot at, we were cussed at, we were in a very unique situation in that we were out there outnumbered, outgunned, and we were just we were doing our jobs, but man, I'm telling you, it was very
It's got to be
sad and fearful event, because we were getting shot at, we were getting cussed at, we were in a area to where the city was on fire, and people were out in a pack, just looting up to no good, and just expressing their frustration over everything, and whether it was right or wrong, or everybody has their own opinion. But we were there to do a job, and we were involved right in the middle of that. And it was the first time that I actually had fear, and the fear wasn't because of anything except that we weren't in control. The whole place was just out of control. It was a very different type of event that I'd ever been involved in. And looking back at it now, I kind of feel proud to be part of that history, because I was there. I had firsthand memories of that entire whole event. I remember the night it went down. I remember we were actually working, and part of the mission for the California Highway Patrol is that of mutual aid, whether it's a natural disaster or, in this case, civil unrest. I think everybody got the call to assist the area with our help and get involved to bring some law and order to the whole event. So that probably was one of the only times that I was in fear, because we were outnumbered. We could have shot one person, but there would have been 150 people coming at us, and full of hate, ready to take you out. There was one incident where we were out. Now, mind you, when we went out and we were dispatched from our the command post where we were all originally congregated, there were 4 to a vehicle. There was a long rifle. We had our shotgun. We had the driver and another individual, another officer with us. So we drove in a group of four deep. When I mean 4 deep, there were 4 units together in our squad. And when they told us to go, it was just go out. And yeah, you hate to say this, but we were out there without a mission other than go out and patrol. But man, I'm telling you, my unit took some rounds. There was bullet holes by the end of the first night that we were out, and then our responsibilities, or shall I say, our assignment changed from patrol to being assigned to fire stations and respond with the fire engines to the fires, to calls, to everything. And that in itself also was just unexplainable type of assignment, because we would go on scene and get shot at. We would get sniped at. It was
That's crazy.
crazy. Yeah, it was really something that I don't think anybody could really comprehend unless you were there. Which, like most things that we witness as cops, that it's just something that's really unique. So that probably was. I'll say it. It was the only time that I had ever been in fear. With other types of calls, aside from that type, that what I've just explained, you go and you have an adrenaline rush. You want to go, and you don't think of fear. You just think of doing your job and taking the bad guy down.
Right, and then it's over, and you de-escalates, and yeah, those riots. That's something so unique that you experience that most cops won't experience anything like that in their entire career, and it is a really scary thing to imagine when you're the police force, you're law and order, you're the long arm of the law, and usually when you go out in force with other officers like that, that's it. You're the biggest gang in town. You're the final word. So to have that kind of police presence, the city's burning, who's going to come get you? You're it.
It's it. Yeah, that was it was a very unique experience to go through. But
that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Now do you feel like the people, like, I know there's like that mob mentality and that hysteria that happens, and obviously in a situation like that, people who have those tendencies or who are already criminals, whether they're angry at something or not, they're going to take advantage and start doing it. And do you think it's like kind of a thing that just kind of catches on to then like people, it kind of works its way up to the people that are usually pretty good, but have tendencies, see it, and they go, all right, you know what? I'm going to go nuts too. And it's just kind of contagious that way. People just go nuts.
Yes, I believe that it's a contagious thing. It's like, you follow the crowd. It's a herd, and it was open game, and it was something that people probably, like you said, they're doing it. I'm going to do it, and they did it, and it was quite a few people out there just starting stuff on fire, looting, just carrying on like fools. I'm telling you,
I heard there was dead bodies, and then there was a couple places, designated areas. You can tell me if this is true or not, that they would just drop the bodies off, and
you know what?
'cause there was no time.
I had no, I didn't witness that firsthand, but I mean, there were places we were told to go if you run into this or run into that, and it was just like that. It was definitely a different experience.
Man, that is wild, Gil. I have one more question for you, and it's kind of a newer question. I've not asked anybody this yet, but a listener had written in, a fan of the podcast, and I was debating whether I was going to try it or not, and maybe I can ask the audience right now, and I think I already did ask them in the podcast episode that will come out after this one, but can you tell me a feel-good story or something, an event that happened that things went well and you went above and beyond and really helped the community and felt good?
Wow, this one, I'm trying to get through this one real quick, only because I know we've been on the air for a while, and this one's a really feel-good story. And it's a feel-good story personally, and the reason is because this is how it went. I have a partner of mine that I work graveyards with, and we all, during the course of our careers, go separate ways. I went to investigations. He went on and turned out and became a motor rider. So he was on a stop. Again, I'm working investigations, and he's I shouldn't say a stop. He was checking on a disabled vehicle on the side of the freeway. He was on the side of the freeway, and as he's on the side of the freeway, this what turns out to be a drunk, I would imagine, but at the time we catch him, he wasn't a drunk. But anyway, this drunk veers off the freeway, and he runs my partner over, literally breaks both of his legs in half. The only reason he survives is when the vehicle hits him, he goes headfirst into the windshield, and he has his helmet. But prior to this happening, he pushes the two people that he's checking on out of the way, and he's the one that gets hit.
Wow.
When it goes down, the only description they have of this vehicle is it's a dark-colored, large sedan, and the only identifying description was that it had damage to the right front side of the windshield. The call goes out. We get the call, being the investigation detective unit of our department. Come to find out, I know who the fella is. He's my partner, and he's at critical condition. We go on scene, get witness statements. We put out the call with the description that we have. And the one fortunate thing about living and working in an area that you grow up in, you know the geographics about the certain areas where that particular criminal element is prevalent. So we put the call out. My partner and I are the case agents to this particular incident. Hit and run, partners down, a fellow officer transported, not in good condition. Don't know if he's going to make it or not. As we're getting all this together, me and my partner go to the hospital to make sure he's all right. We're coordinating the case, getting units dispatched, putting the BOLs out, being on the lookout with what small description that we have. I go to the hospital real quick to check on my partner. As I get there, I run into his wife. His wife is, as you can imagine, not in good shape.
Sure.
She's, he's in the operating room. He's both his legs are broken. Blah 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 blah. And then she tells me, Gilbert, find this guy. And I tell her, I promise I'll find you. I'll find him. I'm sorry. And I say this, and when I say this, my partner's with me. And after I say that, we step back, leave. On our way out, and Ray goes, do you realize what you just did? I says, yes, we got to find this guy. Well, we worked through the night. With the BOL that went out, I had instructed allied agencies in a particular area to concentrate in this one part of town that if this guy is going to be around, that it's highly possible that's where it's going to be. And wouldn't you know it, one of the San Diego PD units puts out the call, hey, we might have found the suspect vehicle. And it's in the area that we say, not too far from the actual incident. Nobody's there. We get the license plate number. We won the license plate. There's a change of ownership. It's been sold a couple times. We go to each address. And luckily, the second address that we wind up going to, we tell them what's going on. We try to develop this type of rapport with them, offer him money to spill his guts, just to become an informant. Well, little did we know the individual that we did try to develop as a informant, he knew who the guy was, and he had it out for him because evidently this suspect had molested this guy's young daughter. So he says,
wow.
He gives him up. And it just really, we found the vehicle. We find this informant. He gives us all the information. We wind up finding or heading towards this guy's place of residence. We're starting to set up on the house. At the time that this all happens, the guy puts two and two together. And by the next morning before the sun came up, we were able to nab this guy. And to make a long story short, I was able to take him into custody, or shall I say, we were able to take him into custody. And there was a lot of things in between that occurred that really was a testimony to the other allied agencies that were involved and their diligent work and their ability to just go out and pound the pavement and just do their thing. And we were able to find the vehicle and find the guy and got the suspect, took him into custody. And that very next morning, we were able to tell Rhonda that we got the guy, and she was she broke into tears, And,
yeah, how good did that feel?
Yeah, let me tell you, not only did it feel good, but it was such a relief because, man, you sometimes you say things and wow, you gotta come through. But man, I tell you, I firmly believe that we would have worked if it would have took a week, we would have found that guy. But we had actually had the border covered because San Diego being close to the Mexican border, we had custom agents and we had units out there checking traffic as it went south. We had everything just came together, and it was a great work with the different agencies that were involved, and the work and the way they just were able to just jump on it, no questions asked. It worked out good. That was a really good. To me, it was a feel-good story. Only that because it was satisfying that we could get this knucklehead and get him into custody and get him to where he belonged. That was in jail.
Absolutely, man. That's great. Fantastic. They should.
Yeah.
Every one of those incidents should happen like that. That's great, man.
It was a lucky thing. Yeah, very, very lucky.
So, Gil, in closing, do you have any advice that you would give to a young person that wants to be a police officer?
The first thing I would tell them would don't do it. Please don't do it. But of course, that would just be from the opinion of a guy that's already been through it during an old school era, probably, and it's a lot different. It's a lot harder, I believe. But I would tell them to make it a career, not a job. Use common sense, train, and take his training serious. Treat all people with respect and fair. And every decision you make, whether it's a split decision, a decision that takes a lot of thought, but make all those decisions in good faith. And I think it'll help you in the long run in a career.
Gil, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me. You have a great day.